happy Tuesday 10 at 10. I am your host, Richard Charpentier, and every week we get questions being sent to Bakerpedia where we try our best within 10 minutes to answer all of your questions. So let's get started. First question, somebody is asking about packaging. What are the best kinds of packaging to extend the shelf life? It's an excellent question. You know, everybody was spending time and money on the ingredients, on mixing it well, on a nice piece of equipment that can deposit, that can shape, or that can cut your product. But what about packaging? So one important thing in my belief is any shelf life extension has two buckets. One is your ingredients and the quality of the ingredients and where they come from and how you're using them. You know, freshness is as if you buy, make a chicken or fish at home and you buy it a week prior to you cooking it. It's not going to be the same quality as if you're cooking it fresh. So having fresh quality ingredients that you know where they came from and how they were processed, understanding their functionality, and the rest is packaging. Packaging and process play those two 50-50. You know, you have to pay attention to both. But in terms of packaging, there's something that I know Dr. Lin talks on our Bakerpedia page is on the moisture vapor transmission rate. It's called MVTR. It's a term that is being used that as a definition, they're calling it is a measure of the passage of water through a substance. So, and it's basically gauge in terms of grams per the surface area per 24 hours per day of water moving through. So packaging companies have packaging technologists where your product, if you look at a cookie versus a bread, or if you look at a cake versus a cracker, they all have different moisture content. So therefore, your product you're making it's very important to look at what's the best packaging you can use to extend the shelf life. Because as moisture moves around, if you leave anything, an apple, if you leave something on a table, with that packaging, it will evaporate. There's evaporation also. If there's excess moisture, then the product will become wet and soggy, like chips, tortilla chips. If you leave them not in the bag, they start getting what we call stale, but they get soft. So the packaging is there to basically control moisture from the outside and the moisture coming out of the product going outside. Because if you add a packaging with no moisture can escape, you will create mold. So that's why there's a lot of research that goes into packaging technology, and there's a lot of work that I would recommend all bakers looking to extend their shelf life to spend time, because packaging comes in different thickness. Packaging comes with different material where they lay different material. That's where the thickness is created. And in my own experience, I've worked with a packaging that was a trial laminate. So it was 3 layers that we used for the US military. It's heavy duty, but again, it's very expensive. You can't use that because it slows down your line. And that's what, based on the speed at which you're producing and the type of packaging you have, all of that, that's why we're using science. That's why baking science, packaging technology is important as you're trying to extend the shelf life of your product. But excellent question. So now moving on to the next question. We have another question about, I want to know the appropriate flour for flatbread such as pita bread. Please tell me how about proper farinograph parameter for this bread. So if you look for the best flour quality, and I'll read something quickly. Basically, flour is made of starch and protein, as we're all aware. And the assessment of flour quality, or what's most suited for the bread you make, should be made with the end use in mind. So what are you trying to make? Because what are you trying to make is also depending upon what your customers want. So if everybody wanted one style, one thickness, one shape, one color, so then it would be easy. Right now, I'm not knowing what you do, and flour quality, it's how they would perform. So in terms of farinograph, it has to be, once you get a farinograph, you have to be okay. How much absorption to optimize the flour you're using, the strain of flour you're using? How does your flour ferment? As you start to ferment, and what's the rheology? In order to mix it well, so your pita bread can give you, the nice ballooning effect once you bake it. So there's no, this is one pita bread. What they say, and I looked at the bread on pita, and basically they're telling you that the range for flour quality should be within a 9 to 12% protein, 9 to 12% protein. And for Arabic style of flatbread, the ideal protein is 10 to 12% with the range of 9 to 12. But again, it all depends on the milling and the protein quality versus protein quality. Right now we're talking, but as you know, baking is all about touching, reading, researching. There's more going on. So I'll be glad to help you out, but that's a great question, and I hope I answered your question. So then as a next question, somebody wants to know, they have a design and manufacture and install a dough pressing system, and they're seeing that the dough sticks onto the belt while pressing on the top portion. And then they're using extra dusting flour to make sure it doesn't, but now they're thinking it's not economical, etc., and whether or not there are things to do. So in the case of something like that, one thing that I would love to learn, that, and you're not giving me that information, is whether or not when you press dough, you have either a hot press or a cold press, and all those two make a difference. And my assumption is you have a cold press, and if you're sticking, you have to start thinking, do you need to, are you giving enough floor time for the proper absorption? That could be one. That could be your formulation, you're using too much water. That could be you're not mixing properly enough. That could mean you have excess ingredients. That could mean you have extra oxidation systems within your dough. So there's a lot of small things that can contribute to that, versus just, and again, what flour are you using? What's the stream? What's the age of the flour? Is there any additives to your flour being done at the mill? What's your base formula? What's your water, water hardness? It could be so many factors as I start thinking through of what could be the problem to, the solution to your problem. So, and again, if you can go on Bakerpedia for bakery resources, and if consultants, that's something, if you want us to get into deeper into the subject and figuring out where could the problem be in your operation. So I hope it helps, but that's why with baking there is never one straight answer. It's always like several factors, and it's about discovering what creates your problem. So good question. So, and now we're moving on for the last question: how to test instant dry yeast quality and shelf life. Excellent question. So that's a question I've asked manufacturers, and I was told usually you get about 1 year shelf life on a dry instant yeast if properly packaged. As you've noticed, all dry instant yeast packages come into a vacuum pack format. So what does that mean? That means they're sucking out all the air that is in the packaging and making it really tight and compact. Yeast, dry instant yeast, will lose its shelf life due to oxygen. So as a rule of thumb, and again, please check with your manufacturers, once you're exposed, once the bag is open, you'll hear the sound, that means, the air is going inside. It lasts about 7 days, maybe longer. And as a quick test, I will establish a fresh bag. I would put a portion of warm water with a small portion of yeast, and then put it into a beaker with, where you know how far you go. I would do warm water, maybe 90-degree water, do maybe a 1% yeast added to warm water, 90 degrees, and do the same amount when you leave it there, and you come back an hour later and you see how far it goes to the top in the market. And that would be establishing a quality control for you. Yes, it's simple, it just takes time. Then if you ever have an issue, then you can come back and say, hey, that yeast is only going half the amount in 1 hour, what's going on? And remember, you have in a bakery, you have variability in the flour, the weather, the ingredients, and yeast is no exception. Yeast is a living organism, it's a fungi, it's being dry, so that means you could have variability within your product. And I like the fact that you're trying to put a program to ensure you get the same quality in and out. So that's a good job on that. So again, this is it for today. Thank you very much for tuning in to Tuesday 10 at 10, where we answer your questions. And I'll see you next week, my friends. Thank you. Bye-bye.